Hello and welcome back to the Thursday Night Podcast, episode 281. My name is Brady, joined by David as always. And a little bit later this week, life interfered. I will take the brunt of that even. But did get on with State of Atlanta and Ben Moore. So kind of a sequel to last week's episode we had Ben on this podcast. A little collaboration. You can look at that in the collaborations tab on YouTube for... originally done by State of Atlanta, so it's all their insignias and everything, but on our YouTube as well. But I will also helpfully drop a little link if you missed that. It was basically an hour of a gripe fest. Lots of concerns about the state of direction of basically everything Georgia State athletics, but tried to provide what insight I could in that discussion. I think it's good stuff. Kind of covered all the bases, hit football for a long stretch, hit the radio silence of it all for a bit, and then ended on basketball, and even some reminiscing of the Ron Hunter days, because that always inevitably comes up when things are going poorly. So check that out if you missed it. But it's a good thing that we kind of already had in our head to plan to do this episode, even though we were not going to do our regular time of the week, because we got news, something that we, I think, have been kind of waiting on, to the point that we had pushed the baseball discussion all the way to next season, which is kind of how it's turning out. But positivity at the end of the day, because Georgia State concretely giving us information about the construction process is going to begin, has begun. The land disturbance permit is what it is called, was approved on the 18th of November for the new baseball stadium over in the old Fulton County Stadium lot. Already got diggers and such out there. I won't pretend to know what all the construction equipment is, but I've seen videos, I've seen pictures, so it's out there. They're doing stuff. They're getting the asphalt out of the ground. ETA of fall 2026, which means effectively it'll be a 2027 start. So losing a year when they thought, what we were all told, we thought this was going to be this season for baseball and that they were done in the bus lot, but they will have one more show this spring in the bus lot, but pending any weird flare-ups, which can happen in construction, Georgia State baseball will have its new home in 2027 finally, and it's about time. And also, just like, frankly, it did not need to take this long to hear something, even if it was going to be delayed. Like, the fact that they kind of just waited it out, like, I get it. All these things can kind of pile up, and it's like you got to get all your ducks in a row, and there's a lot of ducks in your row to get, but, like, I understand that there was initial frustration from fans of like, great, this is confirmation of what we already knew. Why aren't we hearing about this earlier? So a bit of a positive, bit of a negative. It would be unfair for everyone involved to not talk about it in both fronts. But that's where we're at. Baseball does have a new stadium. Stuff to talk about.
Didn't the stadium get announced like for the very, very first time like in 2014, 2015 or something like that?
I think it was later than that, but... Okay.
Because like it was
because Turner Field didn't turn into Center Park until
17,
like 20s. Yeah, so, but even then, I don't remember the chatter. I mean, we weren't doing the podcast then, but so I wasn't as plugged in, paying attention to it. But I feel like it was maybe a little bit later than that. But it might as well be 2014. It feels like it's like the gift that's never going to come, and so finally, official word that it is going to come. Just on a little bit of a delayed front.
It's just such a surprise because I feel like we've been waiting for like you said, we've just been waiting for something, not just them actually putting shovels in the ground. Like, yeah, that'd be great, but we were just waiting for them to say literally anything, and they just kind of didn't. And I understand the bureaucracy of this type of stuff. I'm not saying this specifically to criticize, but it's just been such a surprise at how truthfully silent it has been,
So threw up there, if you're watching on the YouTube, the rendering of the new, what it's going to look like. Sounds like it's not concrete exactly what the plan is with the Henry Aaron tribute, but there's going to be something. Doesn't sound like it will be the original, chain link that is up there, which is rubbed some people the wrong way. But I also don't know how feasible it was to leave up. It's not my area of expertise, but I will say that it will be important for them when this is open to nail the PR side of like, this is what's going on with the tribute to Henry Aaron, because there's the risk of you removing this kind of landmark even though it's a parking lot now. And there's some weird people on social media that really are pro parking lots last couple of days when this news came out that I don't understand that viewpoint. But I do know that it would be a sore subject if Georgia State does botch the airing of it all. And so waiting to see what that looks like. Like, I literally am waiting. Like, I said it earlier on the Panther Talk boards, like, I am just going to wait this out and just see what it looks like at the end. Like, it does no good at this point kind of speculating on the worst or assuming the worst. They did mention in the press release, or maybe it was not in the press release, it has been mentioned that the statue that is over currently in, like, the plaza area is going to move to the baseball stadium out front. So there will be that fitting tribute and then something else that sounds like in, like, left field for him. And this is going to be phase one, and it's already kind of been phased down from what we originally heard it was going to be. And so I think reality meets whatever, but it's going to be what we've talked about every time we've talked about this, where it's like, it's finally in the campus footprint. Everything, like amenities and everything, going to be updated. Even if this is not like state-of-the-art best ballpark in the Sun Belt, it will be better than what Panthersville is. It'll be more modern. And you'll have that skyline right there that, especially with the ESPN Plus shots, I think will do a lot. Night games you can see the Olympic logo there. I don't know if you actually be able to see that because this is kind of a wide angle, but it's the thought that counts.
It absolutely is. I mean, the fact that I can only recognize the Convocation Center because I think everything else is still a little bit too far.
Well,
but
way over left, you got Mercedes.
No, sorry. I was gonna say specifically Georgia State buildings.
Okay, fair enough.
The fact that you can see Georgia State buildings right here is good enough. You know. Also, I like that they changed the color of the torch. Like, that's definitely not that blue in real life.
Not at all. Like, you cannot alter the torch.
No,
not allowed. Because I think multiple people have wanted them to, like, repurpose that, and I think the International Olympic Committee would have, like, dropped the hammer if you do anything with that. So curious to see how that kind of all goes. Obviously, if it's got a estimated time of being done in fall 2026, that does give them a bit of leeway to be done for sure by the time the 2027 season rolls around. But I think the happiest person of all through all this will be Brad Stromdahl, baseball head coach, who hasn't been lying to recruits, but might feel like he has been for as many years as now he's been able to say, like, we are moving here, like, your workout stuff, everything is underneath the Stadium Center Park right now, but soon the baseball park is going to be walking distance too, instead of schlepping it out to Decatur. He will now be able to, a lot more credibly, and with, like, all of this information, be able to really sell it going into this next signing class as far as what he's able to bring in for the Panthers. And so, happiest for him of all, honestly, just because I'm sure he has been living and dying with every update or lack of update and wanting this to come to fruition, because, you know, through some of those early years, I'm sure that was part of the selling point. As soon as this idea became a reality, or was going to become a reality, was, hey, come here. It's not going to be the easiest place to recruit just yet, and, you know, you've got the Atlanta talent and all, but the off-campus nature of it really worked against you along with everything else. So happy for him. It's too early. Just what we got was not that specific anyway, but I'm curious to see what, like, modern there is, especially as far as, like, the press box. Certainly, hopefully it's a bigger, better press box than what is currently there at Panthersville, that doesn't accommodate either visiting radio or really media to cover it, other than, like, the staff there who need to be in there, and, like, Dave Cohen when he's doing either radio or TV for the broadcast for Georgia State. So hoping to find out more over time as to what that looks like, but it is ultimately probably going to be, I don't know what people's baseline is. I don't know that it is going to be, like, everyone's ideal, like, picture book idea of what the stadium was going to be, but you have it here now. Someone can build on it in the future if it's so warranted and if the money comes in for that. And so I think it is just so important that they get this first step. So important that we've dedicated 10 minutes talking about a stadium that won't even been open for a year and a half.
Hey, man, we should just go through and dissect how absolutely shallow these outfielders are playing in this rendering. Like, is this a no singles outfield defense? What is going on here?
Well, it could be like bottom of the 10th, bases loaded. So if anything gets over your head, the game's over anyone a sac fly. So it's just like you're protecting against, yeah, exactly, no singles. So
Yeah,
I
that's
found the
fair.
hypothetical.
I just assumed
There was
that
some-
these blue are Georgia State, so
They were
could
pointing
be
out
white.
that, well, I guess you could do it in the top of the half too. I guess really protect against runs. But someone did point out there's another shot. I don't think it's on this article link, and I'm just going to leave this here because I don't want to go digging for it. Third, like guy stealing third, like the shortstop is like in left field. Like whoever did the rendering is not necessarily a baseball whiz. Like there's some finer details that were missed on that, but I guess it's important that we really understood the construction side of it more, and so I will allow them that fault.
Exactly, and they got an ump here, so like that's all you need. You got enough players.
So obviously there will be another baseball season between now and then. We'll cover that. We'll, as we learn more and more on this podcast, maybe have some voices on who can provide more clarity of what this is going to look like. Certainly we will do so, but gonna leave baseball for now. Gonna run through kind of a hodgepodge of football stuff, both Georgia State and not Georgia State specific, but starting with the Georgia State stuff. Finally got a batch of coaching news because we had kind of been waiting for any movement in that regard. And it is all people getting promotions off of this staff, so take that for what you will after a 1-11 season. But Jeremy Hawkins, defensive line coach, will now have the same role at Syracuse. That news came back earlier in the week. Stone O'Neill, who's been the director of player personnel, will be going to Texas A&M to serve a role off field for them as well. So congrats to Stone for getting, to an SEC program, going to College Station, coming off a college football playoff berth. However, that ends for the Aggies. And then safeties coach C.J. Wilford is going to join Ryan Silverfield's new staff at Arkansas. So there's two sides of this. Obviously, there is as you're looking to continue to hire staff, and obviously this being a pretty make-or-break year for Del McGee, there is a certain positive to selling, hey, if you come here, I can get you on a SEC staff next season. But there is also the part of, like, if you have two on-field guys go into power conference programs and one of your key guys in the behind-the-scenes, the roster building, going to these big programs, and you went 1-11, what does that say about what's left? And what does it say about, like, just the overall job? Like, it totally helps the program in one way, but in the other way, it's like, well, you're losing these guys, and this was already a one-win team with them, so what's going on here? And then the recruiting and everything else besides that these guys are no longer on staff, what did that'll affect? Because I know Jeremy Hawkins was a well-regarded recruiter for the work he had done in his 2 seasons in Atlanta.
Yeah, Georgia State got a lot of talent in the defensive backfield position, so it's not totally a surprise.
Yeah, and I can't put a timetable on this. I think that again, following the trend of, like, there's just not a lot of buzz coming out of Georgia State. I think waiting a couple weeks and getting a trickle of these 3, it's not the end of it, and I think that it will end up being regretful that maybe there hasn't been a more of a front foot approach to kind of like, this is what has not been working, we need to move on from. Like, it's ultimately a business. Everyone understands it, and if guys get the chance to get promoted to other jobs at bigger programs, you're not going to just, like, rush to make a move because they're doing that. Like, if they're leaving, you're going to let them obviously get that promotion well earned and not turn it into like a, whatever. But there's still changes that need to be made, obviously bringing in to replace those guys, but also I can't imagine the rest of the staff holds together just because the season didn't go well. And so we're still kind of in a holding pattern as far as finding out how these things will come about, but we'll be on top of that as it comes, as we are with portal movement, in and out. I guess some of this is not portal, but right at the end of the signing period last week after we spoke to you last week, but before this episode, got a few more names that signed, got a few new names that are leaving the program, ran through a lot of them, I think, last week, but you're replacing basically your entire defense secondary now with Bernard Kazi gone, Jalen Jones, Deuce Walker, D.I.C. Hopkins, and then other guys as well, Sam McCall, so that basically starting entirely over at cornerback and even at safety a little bit. And then Reed Chandley going in the portal back on December 5th, so you're going to do a new punter for the second straight off season. And then maybe unsurprisingly, Jabril Rhodes-Nelson, defensive end, went in the portal the day Jeremy Hawkins, it was announced, was going to Syracuse. So probably not too many pieces to put together there as far as the guy who recruited him leaves. He's going to go try and get somewhere in the portal. Maybe he ends up at Syracuse. I'm not saying he is or isn't. But certainly doesn't surprise me that guy's position coach leaves, that there is entry in the portal. Might not be the last instance of that, especially with all the D-line talent they brought in this last signing class. So I guess that's still pending. There's currently 18 names in the portal from Georgia State, and they brought in 8 guys from lower ranks. So I don't think that churn is done yet either. The portal opens early January. I imagine we'll start to hear more and more names as that goes on, and we'll bring you that as we know more. Other place I wanted to go, I mean, obviously, kind of the topic of college football right now, playoff is upon us, and the Sun Belt's got representation. There was a certain path it had to go to get to that point. Duke had to beat Virginia in the ACC title game, and James Madison had to handle business against Troy in the Sun Belt title game, and all of it happened. And so the JMU Dukes are the 12 seed. They will head to Eugene to play Oregon in the college football playoff. But not only that, we know who James Madison's new head coach will be when Bob Chesney officially leaves for UCLA, because Sunbelt Billy Napier, is making his return to the league. Starred here, was at Louisiana, brought them to the top of the Sun Belt, went to Florida, did not work out as well, but he will be back in Harrisonburg replacing Bob Chesney. Good couple of weeks there for the outfit out of Harrisonburg, must be said.
Must be nice, you know. They're finally able to win the Sun Belt, and here they are. I will say this: I'm frustrated. No, frustrated is not the right word, but I was really hoping Florida would have fired Napier last year, or 23, I think, because I wanted him to find a way to be Georgia State's coach. Starting in 2024. This is prior to Coach Elliott leaving. Like, call this like January 1st or whatever, when he was still, expected to be the Georgia State head coach fall.
I think that was year 1 or year 2 for Billy. It would have been rash for them to do it then, but I had the same thought.
I thought it was yeah, I think it was year 2, and I do think it would have been rash. But I mean, you know how SEC sports fans are. If you're not winning, if you're not going to Atlanta, it's a failure. Yeah. I mean, Alabama fans right now think their season is a failure after losing in Atlanta. So
the blood was in the water the whole time for him, basically, and it never turned around. But I likewise had him on like a long list in my head as far as like if the job opened, if he would be interested. He obviously has done it before. It was a curious fit to me because obviously they had gone a different model recently. They'd mostly just, we're going to go get this FCS successful head coach and bring them up, and it worked gangbusters.
Hey, are you an FCS head coach with an 800 win percentage? Congratulations. You're going to James Madison.
Right. And there were options there. Mike Jacobs, who was at Mercer, ends up at Toledo, and basically has never had a losing season as head coach. Yeah.
Really good hire.
Yeah, and he's local there to Ohio, too, so he's going back home. Makes a lot of sense. And maybe that wasn't one they could have made because maybe he was on Toledo's mind anyway, but it was curious to me as far as the specific fit, and obviously there were concerns about him at Florida never hiring an offensive coordinator that would call plays, but the early reports are that he will do that for James Madison. He will be just kind of the CEO. He will actually have a play-calling OC, and so maybe he's learned from things that didn't go well. Obviously a really good infrastructure to build on there, and so I think, unfortunately for everyone else in the belt, there's no reason right now to project a massive drop-off from JMU. We'll wait to see what the talent switch-up is as far as like who from them stays, goes in the portal. But he built a winning operation at a less well-resourced school than James Madison, and now he's going to the reigning college football playoff recipient participant team. So certainly right now it seems like everything's still pointing up for those in purple and gold. Couple of other notables from around the league. Charles Huff is gone from Southern Miss after 1 year. He goes and replaces Ryan Silverfield at Memphis. So that is now...
What an incredible 2 years for that man. Seriously.
He will now go. He will be the head coach of 3 different G5 programs in 3 straight seasons. The hire makes a lot of sense to me from Memphis's point of view.
And this time, like 2 years ago, he was on the absolute hottest seat in the Sun Belt. So just the fact that he went from that to, being promoted, like Memphis is a good outfit for a Sun Belt coach to end up at. So it's just what an incredible career turnaround.
Yeah, and Blake Anderson, a familiar name to the Sun Belt friends, is going to be promoted. He's been the OC for Southern Miss. He gets the full-time head coaching job. Bit of a problem as he exited from Utah State, some off-field handling of issues that ultimately is what led to him leaving Logan. But getting another head coaching job here, so obviously they did their due diligence, feel that they can trust him to run their program well. And so what he did at Arkansas State, he had a Sun Belt champion. So on paper, it makes a lot of sense. Fit and knows the program, obviously, knows the players. If there's players that Charles Huff won't just do a 2.0 of what he just did and bring them from Huntington to Hattiesburg to Memphis, if there's players who want to stick around, maybe hiring a guy who's the OC plays a part in them doing so. Similar theme there with Will Hall getting the job at Tulane, which shocked me, frankly, after he goes 14-30 at Southern Miss.
Way out of left field.
From
way
OC.
Out of left field.
I thought there were, to my eyes, there were better candidates, although you can't beat that home factor, so I'm sure they're hoping on that as well. But a risk there for me, after making the Willie Fritz to John Summerall hires, could be a curveball here that doesn't work out for the Green Wave, which would be the benefit to the Sun Belt if one of these teams in the American that has been riding high falls off a little bit. But another notable Sun Belt adjacent hire there. And then the last one is Tim Beck, goes 20-18 in 3 seasons at Coastal Carolina, and it's not enough. Pay a 1.7 whatever buyout, move on from him. And they just recently made their hire, bringing in Missouri State head coach Ryan Beard, who had done a good job stewarding them to the FBS and into the transition and beyond. And so it's 3 hires that make a lot of sense, and I think have the potential to elevate the league even further. And so all of this to run through and say, like, pressure's on for an immediate flip of the situation for Del McGee. Like, the league has been in a bit of a down spot, as far as like top to bottom. It hasn't been as strong as maybe it was a couple of years ago. And old friend Scott Watkins had a chart up on Twitter today I saw that kind of illustrated that the league is not where it was a couple of seasons ago, and that needs to change. Some programs are doing their job with the hires they've just made to bring in coaches. And now, with everything being stationary for GSU, they're going to have to make a lot of use of that continuity.
You got to make those coaches feel like, yeah, this is year one in my, program. Now, obviously, they're good coaches. I'm not saying that you're going to punk Billy Napier or anything like that, but if you're going to be the 3-year head coach or whatever, because I don't think Coach would be the longest tenured Sun Belt East coach.
And Ricky Ronnie just got an extension at ODU. That's the other coaching.
Yeah.
So well earned for him for the season they put together. Potential for 10 wins in the bowl game. Although he will have to do without Colton Joseph, who goes to the portal. So new QB. Curious what that looks like, because it felt like the formula was really unlocked by having Colton Joseph there at QB. But Ricky Ronnie has some job security to plan for the future there now. And Georgia State's going to have to find their way in a league, and especially in the Sun Belt East, that, I mean, the appetite for winning is there across the board. And so you can't get complacent after a 4-20 season, but like, you can't feel like just because these coaches are moving on or these position programs in different spots, losing your quarterback, that it's just a little bit of work and you'll get there. Like, big offseason ahead, big next month ahead for Georgia State to meet the moment. Get ready to go to battle in this league, in this conference, in this division.
Is it Clay Helton? Clay Helton's the longest tenured Sun Belt East coach, because 2022 was when he got hired there.
No, it's Ricky Ronnie, I think. He was 2020, and then he coached in...
That's right.
2021 was his first season coaching, because he was hired in 2020, and they ended up not playing in 20 because of COVID. But I believe Ricky Ronnie, because now...
That's got to be it. Okay, yeah.
I think
you're
Butch
right.
Jones is either 21 or 22 as well. So.
Okay. That makes me feel so much better, because, like, that doesn't... There's no way that We're not that old, man. The podcast isn't that old.
Well, there was the time where like we blinked and Sean Elliott was the dean of the Sunbelt coaches. It didn't last that long, obviously, but
yeah,
it can really sneak up on you in this day and age.
Yeah. What is Kirby Smart, the longest tenured SEC head coach? Because Saban retired,
right. And Mark Stoops gone.
If you look it up, like Kirby's been there since like fall 2016 was his first year. Which I mean, it feels like yesterday that they made that hire.
Yeah, but then that's the year I was a college graduate, so it really makes me feel old. That long ago.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. You don't have to remind me about 2016 things making me feel old.
So. Fair amount there, obviously, just kind of rattling through a lot of news. Hopefully, if you didn't hear it, or even if you did and just want a little bit of analysis, we kind of covered our bases there. Obviously, still another week before JMU plays and before bowl season really kicks off. Troy plays Jacksonville State next Tuesday. It's a 9 p.m. kick, which is the only thing, 9 p.m. Eastern, which is like, just play it an hour earlier, man. What are we doing? But a good, like, I know that there was a bit of discontent from at least the Troy side of that it was a game in Montgomery that they weren't going to get like a new travel experience for their fans or for the team even, that Montgomery is not that far from Troy to begin with. But as we start to make use of like what the new bowl world order is, and you've got Notre Dame being babies and sitting out of bowl games, whatever, I like that you have this inter-Alabama rivalry game going on. I think it's the first time in a long while that they've played it, because Troy obviously went up to FBS a lot earlier than Jack State did. So this is what bowl season should be about. Georgia Southern needs a bowl partner. All the 5 and 7 teams keep turning them down. So guess what? The group up in Boone don't say no. So they're 5 and 7. They're going to the Birmingham Bowl. It will be a Sunbelt rivalry game. Deeper than hate is happening in the Birmingham Bowl. Like, that's the stuff we've got to grab onto. Obviously, Georgia State fans don't have anything to grab onto. The team went 1-11. Their number was lost. They were not going to get called about potentially filling a bowl spot. But just for the group of 5, but for the sport overall, like, as you keep finding programs that are trying to make less and less of each bowl game, that is not the college football playoff, and that's certainly clearly visibly happening. I'm grabbing onto the stuff like that, where you've got these Alabama schools playing, you got the rivalry game that like App State couldn't turn it down, and I'm still finding my joy in bowl season. We might have to kind of reframe it, and it might not be the first time you have one of these weird situations where like an interconference game happens and it's a rivalry that just like that's what happens in the bowl games now because a program opts out or whatever. So just wanted to highlight a couple of those. I think maybe next week we'll really get into like maybe throw some pick'ems out and whatever, but wanted to highlight the Troy one because that'll happen between now and next time we record. And Sunbelt got a bevy of games to look forward to.
I'm bummed about the Notre Dame thing, not because I particularly want to watch them. I'm frustrated about it because, one, they shouldn't have opted out of any bowl. Like, I get it. You know, when you know that you're not in the college football playoff, you know, they have, like, NFL caliber players. I can't think of one outside of Jeremiah Love right now, but, like, Jeremiah Love might be a top 10 pick.
CJ Carr eventually.
Exactly.
But not this season.
It sucks because, you know, this isn't going to be some sort of long playoff rant or anything like that because you've got ESPN shows to go listen to that for. You don't come here for my takes on the college football playoff. But I don't know. I feel like the college football playoff kind of, in a way, forced a lot of this out of Notre Dame. And it sucks because, like...
didn't force anything. They could grow up like everyone else.
Discontent. I should say forced discontent. I'm not saying that Notre Dame shouldn't just suck it up and play in their game, because I do think that they should. I think they're well within their right to turn it down, as anybody is, but they should probably play the game. And so I understand why there is some discontent there. But, like, there's still good bowl matchups, you know? Like, Michigan's playing Texas. Like, that's fun. I don't think that was a playoff
Michigan
game.
fans sure need a distraction right now.
Yes, they do. I don't think that was a playoff game, but it was very close to being a playoff game a couple of times. You know, it's like that's a fun matchup. I'm not going to go through every single matchup. Like, there are fun matchups. Coastal's playing Louisiana Tech. Like, that's a future Sunbelt game, you know? So, yeah. Like, that's a game also, that could happen next year, you know?
Their interim coach was the DC for Louisiana Tech last year.
Exactly. You know,
and storylines.
Like you said, as much as I kind of gave App State some grief down the stretch of this year since they weren't that good, I love that they got off the couch and were like, oh, another opportunity to go beat our rival who we lost to? Yeah, heck yeah, I'm going to go do this. That's what this is about.
Saying, like, if you enter the portal, please come and play still. Like, you're welcome to. Like, it's an interest. Like, all the 5 and 7 teams who did say no, like, part of it is just because, like, season's over, semester might be over. Like, they might literally just not have had players there to, like, they had wrapped their season.
Wasn't that Marshall last year when they got that huge fine from the Sun Belt because Coach Huff
they were
left?
bowl eligible, but yeah, they dropped because I think they had like 30 players they were going to be able.
Yeah, everybody left.
But obviously, if you're App State and you're in that situation, you get the call. Like, you can't say no. Even if you've got the 40 players, you got to start making phone calls and make it happen because you can't be ducking the rival, especially after you lost that game in the regular season. I know that they're probably the underdog. They're 5 and 7. I will say this: disappointing first year for Dow Loggins there in Boone. Having said yes, which he had to do, they simply cannot lose that game. They cannot drop to 5 and 8 and lose to Georgia Southern twice in the same season. But similarly, Clay Helton can't lose that game either. So it's a weird, it's like an anxiety bowl that we didn't know we were going to get in the bowl game.
Love me a good bowl game anxiety bowl, even though that's not how those specifically work. I'm trying to recall back to the App State game because I believe App scored late to make it look better than it was. Yeah, they scored late to make that look closer to a 2-point game.
Ugly football game.
It was pretty bad. So yeah, they definitely cannot lose this game. There's no ties in college football, but you got to find a way.
Well, I think we've delayed it enough.
Oh,
obviously,
no. Oh God.
We can't. There's no real sunshine here either because it was not a great trip to South Beach to Miami for the women's team. But since we last spoke, the Georgia State men's basketball team played a regulation basketball game against Kennesaw State. It did not go well.
Played is certainly a word to use.
Kennesaw State 92, Georgia State 69. This is the third straight year that these teams have played. The renewal of the in-state rivalry is the third game of those that Kennesaw State has won. And this is by far the biggest blowout of them. Just looking at the numbers, Kennesaw State outshoots Georgia State 52% to 27%. 45% on three-pointers to Georgia State's 20 on 6 of 30. So kind of more of the same what we've seen of just kind of like resorting to threes as just the offense and it not going particularly well. The minor victory here is you only get out-rebounded 50 to 38. So your plus side is you were minus 12 on the glass. And you forced 19 turnovers for Kennesaw, or this could have gotten like really out of hand. There was a stretch at the end of the first half where I think the closest it got to again was 10. Didn't get back to single digits, but Kennesaw jumped out to a lead and sat on it for most of the half. And then sloppy play let Georgia State kind of creep back in, and maybe you're making it a game at halftime, but the Owls re-stretch the lead to 15 at the break. They're up 43-28. And then, even though about a minute into the second half, their leading scorer, Simeon Cottle, gets a flagrant 2 for kind of throwing an elbow, like launching, like a college football targeting into the back or into the face of Micah Tucker. He's gone for about the final 19 minutes. For someone else, I think there might have been a foul out situation where they like 13 minutes left there without one of their other league contributors. Like everything was pretty set up for Georgia State to kind of try and make a show of it, at least make it respectable. They're playing their final half without their guy, and nothing like that resembles what happened. And it is what it is with this team at this point. If you listened on Tuesday, on Wednesday, whenever you listen to the roundtable State of Atlanta and Ben, like, we don't got answers on the basketball thing. Well, we do, just kind of, we don't have any satisfactory answers. This is kind of the further culmination of where this project has ended, and this wasn't as bad as the South Dakota State game in final score, but I think it has a much greater factor in people's response to this season, because it's like, the guttural reactions from people who were Georgia State grads that I saw that was like, how is this happening? Magnitude a lot greater in this game than it was, even though the score was worse against South Dakota State.
Yeah, I mean, I say this both in basketball and I say this in football as well. Kennesaw State has better athletics than Georgia State right now, and that is something that I can't stop thinking about. And it was always an opportunity for Kennesaw State to kind of have some good growth in both sports. I don't think that even if Georgia State was kind of being as we expect them to be, that would be different. But
I have always said there's not an obstacle between these programs. Both
Correct.
can be rising at the same time.
Correct.
Georgia State's stuff is of their own making. Congrats to Kennesaw for winning the winning the Conference USA title in football. Been a good basketball program, but it's like that isn't why Georgia State is bad.
No.
If Georgia State can go back up to the mountaintop and meet them and challenge them at least certainly on the basketball side, they can do better than this, and they can meet them at their level.
I think that comment right there, if I can just slightly change it to step back a little bit for a second, I think that comment right there is what frustrates me and bothers me, because you can lose to Kennesaw State. I mean, I don't think there's anything, it is not the most damning thing in all the world to lose to Kennesaw State in a football game, in a basketball game, whatever. It's the fact that Kennesaw State has not only passed Georgia State, but they're not even swimming in the same pools right now. That to me is the crazy part. Because like you said, there's no obstacle between the two schools. There is nothing that Kennesaw State is doing right now that Georgia State either can't do, hasn't slightly done, or there's no barrier. It's not like they're competing with I think Georgia Tech and UGA in a way kind of compete directly with each other to a degree on certain players, on certain sports. That does not happen with Georgia State. Georgia State directly competes with Georgia Southern, and yes, obviously the interstate rivalry, the days of Georgia State saying they're the best basketball team in the state, that is so long gone, because you have a Kennesaw State here that can beat you by 23 points on their home court. That's, what are we doing?
I do think there's a psychological thing here also. When you see the 92, and it feels like a bigger score than it is, but 23 is still a big score. But it's just kind of you actually have to do the math on it. It's because I think you see the 92 and just kind of how many points in a 40-minute regulation basketball game? But the motion and the tempo, as kind of predicted, as we kind of knew, gave Georgia State fits defensively. There were a lot of times, especially early in the game, that it would just be Kennesaw would run some action and get someone a wide open three, and they'd be slow to close out on them, and buckets, 10 of 22 on the game. They didn't go to that well a bunch, but when they did, it was probably because they had a wide open look. And then there were other times where they were rolling to the hoop unopposed. Just what they were running on offense was working. Georgia State did not have a response for it. And then the other end, just not good offense. Just no real.
There's no plan
attempt.
Right now.
It's you look at it. They had 5 assists, and I think they had 1 assist through the first 27 minutes. And they got 4 in the final 13, which is a bonanza compared to how it was going. But it's kind of it's not rocket science why it's not working. There's not getting any help out there, and they're kind of on their own to run, get a screen here or there, but end up in ISO ball. The shot clock ends up as the extra, the 6th man against you, and you put up a bad look, and it's indescribable how we've reached this point.
They had the same number of assists as made threes in the first half. That says it all. Realistically, I mean, did 4 people, 2 people foul out in this game? No, 2 people. They almost had as many assists as that. When you have 5 assists, that is such a low number that you can say that 2 is close to it.
I mean, Kennesaw had 16 assists on 32 makes. Georgia State had 19 makes all game. Kennesaw almost had more assists than Georgia State had made field goals overall.
And it's not like they're getting their points from the line. I mean, I don't think that they this is a good free throw shooting team. Still has maintained it. There was a couple of games there where you kind of looked like it wasn't going to be the case there, but it was mostly who took the free throws in those games. But
I mean, you got there
76%.
That's great.
Yeah,
and you got to the line more than Kennesaw. It's something Kennesaw had done really well. It's kind of they got their free throws, and they did in this game. They shoot 29. It was a real foul fest, but they didn't shoot them well. It was 62%, 18 of 29. In a game where you're kind of matching them, that could have been your opportunity where you're out shooting them at the line. Like, there are plenty of games where team shoots 25 to 33 from the line, the other team shoots 18 to 29 or something like that, and that ends up being the difference in the game. This was not one of those occasions where that had any factor or any bearing in the result. And it's kind of is what it is, where even in this one where they got to the line 33 times, got a lot of fouls, it didn't factor in, it didn't make it a better scoring output, better offense, and certainly the defense was kind of just was what it was. Did get Jelani Hamilton back. He played 16 minutes most of the time in the first half, so after kind of another spell where just like guys in lineup, out of lineup, dressed out, then not dressed out on the bench, he's playing again, which is good. But we're at this spot, especially because they had a week off. He's got to find his rhythm again, and he's not on the same wavelength as the rest of the team when he is, in theory, the guy you're going to lean on most to kind of get the offense going. He's not like in camp mode again, but he's starting over a little bit. He had enough time off that there was some rust to shake off, and you saw some of that for sure, but there's no guarantee that it's suddenly better in the games moving forward, that it might still be a process to get him up to his regular minutes, his regular flow, and time is so far from a waste. Time is so far against them already that they didn't need the extra variable of, by the way, you need to get your leading scorer back up to readiness. That was not a factor that is going to help them get any better quicker.
It certainly hurts. I mean, we're 10 games into this season, and I mean, it looks as bad as it ever has. And I think at these games, they're just not close. Where is the competitive games? I mean, Presbyterian, that was a 1-score loss. Everything,
and again, one you shouldn't have lost, like one you had in control, and it's like the last time we have seen this team capable of like outplaying an opponent, frankly.
Exactly.
And they've played several teams that they could have at least hung with. Even if you want to say this Carousel team's better than them, whatever, like Presbyterian game's the last game, other than the game they played against a non-Division I opponent, they have looked like they could outplay for any stretch of time. There have been games they've hung closer, better, longer. They hung around with Sanford a little bit. I say that charitably, but like that is basically the only game in the last month and change against a like opponent. I guess Arizona State, because they were up in the second half against Arizona State. I guess it was that one. I guess I'm blanking.
Yeah.
It is unimaginable that like the best game they've played have been against your power conference opponents, and you're looking like this against Kennesaw, you're looking like this against New Mexico State. And I saw something, I can't pull it up right now because I don't have it. I just it went across my feed. New Mexico State used that game of like, we played badly against Georgia State, we needed the motivation to go out there and play better. And they won that game by 19. They were just like so far from their standard that their coach like publicly mentioned it, maybe in a radio or whatever, and they won by 19. The game was like never in doubt. And like that's where you are at right now as a program, is other teams are using your comfortable victories against you to say, our standard's higher than that. Where's Georgia State's standard? Right now, like honestly.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that box score from the New Mexico State game, like this looks like a quintessential like Ron Hunter type box score where, the team was 38 from the floor but near 40 from three, shot free throws well but didn't shoot a lot of them, didn't turn the ball over, turned the opponent over, solid rebounds. Like I mean, that's correct. Like that's what Georgia State is in basketball right now, and it's sad. I know we'll transition here to Jacksonville State in a second, but outside of the return of the Sun Belt MAC Challenge in February, like this is another extremely poor non-conference showing, and I think in years past we've been able to give the excuse like, yeah, like they've played some tough teams, tough mid-majors and tough power conference teams, but that's not really the case this year. Like, yeah, they have the Cincinnati and the Arizona State, but like South Dakota State should be a peer institution at absolute best when it comes to basketball. Like
at least a school that you're playing within 20 points.
It's within
10
20
points.
Yeah, like I get
not
it.
with. Yeah.
I get it. Taking as a student athlete, however you want to use that, going up to South Dakota, like that can't be fun. Like I get it. I get how road games work and all that. You can't drop that game by 50, man. Like that's.
They have, by the way, the 2 games after they played Georgia State and Cancun, they had 52 points in each of them and lost both of them. They've also lost to Idaho since. They beat Ball State on the road. They beat Northern Arizona, but that's a 6-5 team that is currently 178 on KenPom. So, though they made them look like the Harlem Globetrotters on that night, they've been this is a game that you would have circled just by what their resume is, and kind of get to that with Jack State as well, like a gettable game in theory, but this program's not been meeting that moment this year, and the answers aren't coming. And I mentioned this on Tuesday's roundtable, but sent the audio for the post game from Stan Autry of the AJC, who was in person to cover the Kennesaw game. I mercifully was not there. Worked out in my favor that I didn't have to witness that in person. In about 2.5 minutes of audio, Jonas said, "We're just not a confident bunch right now," 5 times. And the tone of voice and just kind of, he doesn't have any more of an idea of how to fix this than us sitting here right now. And it's obviously a concerning thing, but especially for him, with the way he usually carries himself, it's notable that the complete lack of confidence from him. And it's like, if you're talking about them being confident, and this is the voice I'm hearing from you after this game, I don't know where they're going to get it from if they don't have it already. And so there's always the potential to get worse, and I did lay out a possibility that this would have been a time where they could maybe see a change because there'd be 7 days between games, and obviously that didn't happen. I still really just don't know how much longer we can really roll this out. Certainly I don't see any reason that they need to go on to 20 more games, because it's not helping anyone. It's not helping the team, not helping Jonas, because, this can't be fun. But they roll on for now. They will come back home after a month away. They will host Jack's State. Talked about them on the football side earlier, and they're playing Georgia State for the second straight year in basketball. They're 4-4. After just saying all of that and setting the bar so low below the floor, I do have an eye on this one because it's a home, and because if you look underneath the numbers a little bit, currently Jacksonville State averaging 76 points a game, which sounds great. If you take out their non-Division I games, they're averaging 62 points a game on offense. And so that's kind of Georgia State's MO too. Almost breaking 70 against Kennesaw was kind of a wow moment for the way that things have been going. And so all that to say, this does set up as a possible game you could win, just for the fact that if it's 2 teams that are not great at scoring the basketball, you should be able to keep it within range most of the time, and it's just about stacking enough of those moments together. And so this is your last shot. If you don't find a way to muck it up here and kind of win a game dirty between 2 teams that are struggling offensively, you're going to go winless heading into Sunbelt play, the Division I portion of your schedule. So this is the last stand, the last chance saloon.
And I know you specifically said the Division I portion of your schedule, and obviously that's a true statement. Do you have confidence against Columbia College right now? And I know they beat Fort Valley State. I'm not saying that I expect them to lose. That's not my point here.
Well, you're making me want to check Columbia's record now.
It's just the fact that we're sitting here talking about confidence, and we're just sitting here and looking how this team has been. I really, really hope that they're finding a way to get up for that game, because you can't we were worried about the Fort Valley State game, and they did calm those fears, but it's all of this has been warranted,
I was checking it. I got a little bit of a scare factor there because the other Columbia College is 10-1, and I think receiving votes in whatever league they're in. The Columbia College Koalas, who are the team Georgia State are playing, are 4-10. I'm seeing if they even have played Fort Valley State, because that'd be fun. They have not. So no common opponents there, but they're 4-10 at their level. I mean, that's obviously, if that is what we're talking about, I don't think that we'd have to wait much longer for that press release to drop. But it's a team that in Jacksonville State, I kind of typified the maybe this isn't going to get any better last year because they just gave away that game on the road last season very early on. A game I was fortunate enough to be at, just kind of see the wonder of it all. I say in jest. Good defensive numbers. Their defensive numbers are better than Georgia State's on paper. They're top 70 in effective field goal percentage and 3-point defense. They are top 30 in allowing offensive rebounds, so area that Georgia State struggled in already. This is a team that's good at limiting those O-rebs. Like I say, this has been the first time in a while that it's looked like maybe the Presbyterian game, which was the last one at home, the last one against the type of opponent that it was like you didn't have to do that much talking yourself into on paper. But who knows what group's going to run out of the tunnel. Students are going to be gone, I believe, because this is the last week of classes. So on a Saturday afternoon with the team 1-9, with, I imagine, the season ticket holders that are still somewhat checked in, starting to check out the way the Carousel game went. Who knows what kind of crowd is going to be there? And I say that as, I know it's like the laughing stock with Georgia State of like the crowd or whatever, but like students have been there for the first couple of games. I don't think they will be there for this one.
Every year during the first couple of games at the Convocation Center, it definitely does look like there are a good bit of students there.
But I don't think that's going to be the case tomorrow. Today's, you're probably listening to this, and I just have to say it's your next last hope. And after that, conference play starts, and I just don't. We can maybe keep going back to the schedule every couple of weeks just to check in, like, oh, this App State team looks worse than before. Louisiana maybe is on your level, but you don't have that many home games that you feel great about, and it's going to take a massive win streak to feel good about this team on the road, is what they've shown. So it's sort of it's as close to a no-hoper as there is. This is kind of your last glimmer, and at that point, if you're dropping to 1-10, if you're dropping to 1-12, starting Sunbelt play with 2 losses, I just don't know how you can proceed from there. And so that's obviously getting ahead of myself. And it's not like 2-11 is much better.
Yeah, I was looking at it when you said it. Like, realistically, having job security on Christmas is obviously a lovely thing, but there's no other moment where it kind of makes sense than if you are 1-12 heading into that Columbia College game. There really just is not another moment that makes sense.
And I understand all of the realities at play here. I understand it is a hard business. I understand that nobody wants to win more than Jonas Hayes. He's, I think, devastated that it hasn't worked out. He said something about, like, when I spoke to him earlier before the season started, of like, we've been mediocre and Jonas Hayes isn't mediocre. Like, he wears it a lot. Certainly I think that's weighed on him as he has that post game I just talked about that just kind of wasn't confidence inspiring.
I'll take mediocre at this point.
Fair enough. It had been at least mediocre to this season, and this really gone off the deep end.
I was giving a season-by-season recap, I think last night, and it just made me realize that I long for the 23-24 season, the 14-17 season.
It felt like it was on the cusp until it was not to be. But the point I'm trying to get to is, I get all of the reasons why nothing's happened. You understand why they didn't pay a $1.6 million buyout in Del McGee after 2 seasons, although it has gone very poorly. You understand that there's insider baseball, no pun intended, to work out to get construction stuff done on schedule. But everyone can understand that there's hard things at play and that there's a lot of friction in all of these goals of what everyone's trying to achieve. And understand, at least I will say, I understand that people like Charlie Cobb are doing a lot of work that we don't see. But you've got to see some fruition to any of this, because right now it just feels like everything's kind of like grinding bone on bone and nothing's working, and it doesn't feel like there's anything that's tangibly changed to say we don't think this is working well. And that is what's going to make people check out just as much as just the losses themselves. It just feels like everything's in a stasis, and it's as bad of a stasis as it has been around these programs since we've been in school. Probably not ever, because Georgia State was kind of not caring about athletics there for a few decades, and just the investment, the attention wasn't there. But since it's been what I regard as trying to be a serious athletic product, this is the lowest it's been, and we haven't had much of anything. The thing you hold on to is a baseball press release that we thought was coming a year ago, 6 months ago, whenever. And so it just feels like everything is in kind of a status of neutral when the car's careening down the hill. And I understand all of what is at play and why making a move at basketball coach doesn't really change anything about the season, doesn't change anything about the future, doesn't save you any money, doesn't lose you any money that you weren't going to maybe spend for a buyout at the end of the year. But like, it feels like the most obvious place where you can do something, and this Georgia State fan base is at a place where someone needs to do something, capital letters, because it has been just a rotten 2025, and it's probably going to be until this time next year that anyone's going to feel any better, because you're going to need to see the football season actually improve. You're going to see the basketball team be better. And so it's your first time, it might be your last time for a while, you can really send a signal, because if you're waiting until next season to prove everyone that things are getting better, that's 12 months away, and you need people to still be invested by then.
Yeah, that's 12 months away, and you're not getting a year 5 to do that after the way year 4 started. No way.
Oh, yeah, I'm not talking about that. I mean,
fair.
that is as foregone a conclusion for me. I mean, if you look at, like, Charlie Cobb fired Jason Capel at App State after 4 years in men's basketball, like, there's priors there of, like, he'll give a guy 4 years, and then if it's not working, he's pulled the plug.
Yeah, that's a full, like, school class. And I genuinely come back to that, because if you are a senior at Georgia State right now and you care about the sport of basketball, you have seen not that. Got a nice shiny new stadium. There were changes that were expected to come from that. I know we're running up on an hour, so we're probably going to hit women's basketball and get out of here, but at some point, somebody, I think what I've loved so much about the pieces that you've written is you've articulated something that I think fans have said incorrectly in years past, but it definitely applies now. At some point, somebody has to care about this. We have seen what it looks like when people care about Georgia State.
Tangibly care.
Correct, yes. At some point, somebody in a position to do something, they have to care about this. Because again, like, I'll take mediocre. I'm, longing for a 14-17 basketball season, because the way that this season has started, they'd have to go 13-8 the rest of the way just to match those years. Like, that's what are we doing? They won one football game, and I get, where Georgia State started. Obviously, I've, experienced it differently than the way that you guys experienced it, the people older than me, and, like, I get it, but, like, that era was gone. We thought that era was long gone, and people take steps back. I'm not saying that you can't have a bad season, because that does happen, but, like, you can have a bad season and still show people that you care. Somebody's got to do something, because I'm not seeing who cares. That's not the fans.
And you risk losing them, the ones that are sticking around, the more it just kind of feels like it's stuck. Obviously, we try to spend a lot of time on the women's team as well, but frankly, I don't know if anyone, them included, want us to devote a bunch of time, because it was ugly 0-2 weekend. The areas where this team's not set up to succeed, kind of really showing the wrong side of things, is they lose 103-92 to FIU on the 5th of December, and then a couple days later on the 7th, they lose 99-46 to Miami in Coral Gables. The rebounding margins in these games, the thing I was alluding to, 41-25 in favor of FIU, 58-15 in favor of the Miami Hurricanes. We've spoken about the lack of size, lack of bigs. You lose Mahogany Matthews off last year's team. Kind of is what it is, kind of baked in with this team, but certainly when the margins are that big, you're just not going to give yourself much success. And I'll say this as a compliment to what Gene Hill has done in his years at Georgia State, is that when I saw that FIU score kind of keep piling up, it gave me a bit of a shock because you don't see that type of defensive effort from this team very often. They haven't stacked a bunch of winning seasons in a row, but they've kind of had an identity of being tough to break down, and they've been able to put up a fight, keeping teams off the scoreboard. Giving up 103 to a Conference USA opponent is not... I mean, they gave more points to FIU than they did in Miami, even though that game ended up being a lot closer. That's not been the norm for this program the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, somebody had 40. I don't know that I've seen a Gene Hill team where somebody had 40. Even the Power 5 conference the high major conference games. And if there's one thing to be at least slightly encouraged by, they still put up a lot of points. They still obviously it was an 11-point loss for Georgia State, but FIU they had to get that 103 in theory. But it's the turnovers and it's the rebounds. That's just, you gotta find a way. It's great that you shot more from the floor. It's great that you shot 47%. The team facing you just shot better. They shot less, but they shot better. That's efficiency. They got all those opportunities because they were able to get rebounds. I mean, that really is as simple as it is. I mean, Florida International had 14 offensive rebounds. Georgia State had 25 rebounds in the game.
Don't do the other one. I think it would be sadder.
Oh, it is. That's why I specifically chose that one. That's not good. And yeah, they were out-rebounded by just Miami's offensive rebounds alone.
Just one player for Miami had 17, so one player out-rebounded Georgia State's entire production. But that one, it is sad for the team because now their streak of being a power conference team is over. Unless they go on a run to the Sun Belt tournament and win their first round game there, they could technically keep it alive. But functionally dead because that's a long ways away. And if you get to that spot, we'd be very grateful for it. But it will probably be a hard matchup, kind of like Arkansas State played UConn last year when they kind of surprised and won the league. Unfriendly welcome back to the NCAA tournament for the Red Wolves there. And it might be similar if Georgia State went on one of those runs. But that's not the type of opponent you're going to see often. I mean, James Madison's women's team is, making a case again for being in the at-large conversation if they don't win the Sun Belt tournament. And so there's certainly still big targets on your schedule as far as programs that can really, they could beat you by a bunch of points like that. But as ugly as giving up 58 rebounds in a game is, you're probably not going to have that week after week. But as the FIU game showed you, if you struggle in that regard, even if you're going minus 16 like you did in that game, even if you were putting up points, you could still lose by 11 to a team like FIU because you could play a team like FIU in league play every week. Those games will keep coming. And so you're going to have to be ready to move on from that. And you've got a chance here with Kennesaw coming in on Sunday. Obviously, the women's version of that series happening this weekend after the men's played last weekend. Kennesaw's 5-3. Because I know you might ask, they are plus 6.5 rebounding margin on the season, so this is going to be another test in that regard. The teams that have those type of margins are certainly going to have to be circled, but I think you got to worry about it every game just because it's been such a point of emphasis of when you look at the box score. Even in wins, it's just been a real gap. They're also 35% on threes, and they force 19 turnovers a game. So this one's at home. You're back home, back in friendly confines, but it's certainly a team that you're going to have to do your best to fight against, and it falls upon you to get some in-state mojo going again because football team, basketball team, the men's basketball team have struggled in that regard and might not turn either of those fortunes around. Well, certainly the football team can't until next fall, and men's probably won't do so either.
Absolutely rancid vibes. But, I mean, this is still an opportunity. It's still an opportunity for Georgia State, and they can right the ship here. I will say that the two losses while the scores were not indicative of the talent that Georgia State has, they were, were road games. Wasn't exactly an easy road trip. So I get it. You are not going on the road to Kennesaw State, and this is your last game before conference play. So they're the kind of the meat and potatoes of it. You still got a couple games left outside of it, but that's. I understand why it was that bad, but you've got to find a way to not have that repeat here.
Yeah, I mean they started 1-5 last year in league play, and then turned it around, got 8-10, got to the middle of the bracket, and made some noise. It's not like this team hasn't dug itself out of holes before, so they're not even really in that big of a hole. The scores of the last couple games just make it feel like a bigger one. This is not the same as the men's situation where it's like, where is the positivity going to come from? Like, we've seen this team even this season play better than this. So it's just about finding that again, getting a little bit of momentum before you start your league play right after this game with Kennesaw. So not a lot to leave you with as far as, maybe we should have done the baseball at the end, even though it was more topical, just because it's the glint of positivity in what was a unfortunate week for men's basketball, no turnaround on the football because, it's still the off season, still a long ways to go for that to flip around, but check out the roundtable with the state of Atlanta if you need more doom and gloom, but also to give us clicks, obviously. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Leave comments of what you think. Give us feedback, things you maybe are going to look for. That will keep you tuned in to us, even if the results on the court will not be doing so. Certainly we have to factor that in mind as well. The intrigue factor with these teams are reaching lower and lower points, although we should have some staff news, roster news on the football side to kind of keep the interest. And we'll talk through our takes on the college football playoff and the bowl scene for the next couple of weeks as those games start happening. We'll keep you entertained as best we can here on Thursday Night Podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode. We will catch you next time.